So let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. Before we go ahead and get started, of course, we're on Rumble, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, but we're on YouTube, and YouTube always takes a quick minute or two to connect the tubes. Always makes me a little bit nervous. I'm like, oh, great. Is my censor over there? The censor out there, over there, he's going to have to keep his ears percolated. We're talking about conspiracy theories today. Hey, but it looks like it's working. So that means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. Happy New Year 2023 edition. We've got a lot to get to today, and we're starting off with the 2023 best lists. And that's what we're kicking off this week with. It's, of course, the holiday, federal observation of the holiday. News is kind of dead. Politicians are kind of, doing whatever they're doing, resting up, getting ready to come back tomorrow and continue to ransack the treasury and do whatever they're doing. But today, we're going to get into some best of political lists. There's all sorts of lists flying around. And so we're going to do a little compendium. We're going to assemble them and run through them because they are sort of fun. And I think that you'll enjoy them because I certainly have thus far. But the first one we'll talk about is the top 10 stories that the media ignored. You can see this is the Hunter Biden gif. This is where he was in that interview where he was saying, I really didn't know. No, I really don't know. No, I really don't know. And so top 10 stories that the media ignored in 2022, because there was a lot that they covered up. There's a lot we're learning from the Twitter files, and there's going to be more to come this week. Elon Musk said that the Fauci files should be coming later on in the week. We don't know exactly what day they'll drop, but he said they're dropping nevertheless. So we'll see what those look like. Tons of stuff ignored, and we'll go through the top 10 there. That came over from Wendell Husabo over at Breitbart. And so, by the way, all of these people that were reading their articles, they're all linked down in the description below, wherever it is you're watching this. And so I really encourage you to go follow them, support their work. They're at Breitbart, they're at the Federalist, they're at Headline USA. So I really encourage you to go click their links and follow them. We also have an awesome article. This came out from Real Ben Sellers, and he's on Twitter. And he looks like he just sort of started his Twitter account. And so I'd really encourage you to go follow him. But top 10 conspiracies in 2023. Woo woo. And it's not just like the conspiracies that, we kind of have fun with here. These are the ones that he says will come true. And I think he's pretty much on the mark with a lot of them. So we'll talk about those. Great article. Those came over from at Real Ben Sellers at Headline USA. And then we'll sort of use that, piggyback off that, and talk about some of these other clips that are floating around the interwebs. 60 Minutes interviewed this guy, the author of the book called The Population Bomb, a terrible anti-human propagandist, somebody who just would be happy if everybody else except him and his family were dead. He is still out there saying that 2023 is going to be rough. He's it's the end of the world as we know it, man. And he's going to feel fine, but the rest of us are not. We'll see. And then we've got another story from Zelensky, which sort of piggybacks off one of the conspiracies about media censorship, about CIA, all sorts of fun stuff. So we'll get into that in our second top 10 list. Then we'll check out what's going on in California. Because if you think that there are conspiracies, this is like wild stuff, like all this is crazy. Okay, well, just turn your attention over to California and the Californication of America slowly taking place with guys like Gavin Newsom at the helm. Maybe even be the next president. We'll have to see what Joe Biden does for his next 2 years. But we've got a story there from Joel Pollack over at Breitbart. And he says that he's got a list of the top 5 crazy California laws, including one of the laws that makes California a transgender sanctuary state, more or less. And it makes it very difficult for parents like a father in Texas to contest the, I don't even know what you say it, the chemical castration of his son, I guess, in California is what's happening. And that's according to him. And so over in California, they're saying, no, that's medical. This is a medical procedure and all of that's taking place. So that's a new law in California that's going to go into effect very soon. We'll talk about that. Then we have more from the Federalist. Jordan Boyd wrote a great article called The Top 10 Biden Gaffes Showing Cognitive Decline. So this is not a medical channel, and I'm not a medical doctor. But of course, we've all noticed some very interesting things that have popped up with Joe Biden over the last couple of years. And she assembled a beautiful list, and some of them are kind of fun and funny. Others of them, as we've talked about, it's like, yikes. This isn't good. And if he's not in charge of the company, then who is in charge of the country? Then who is in charge of the country? Who knows? And then our final list that we'll get to is from Charlie Spearing, again, over at Breitbart. Top 25 worst Biden moments. And this was a good list. There was some on there. It's like, okay, that's bad. Some are goofy, some are fun. But I think, it's always appropriate to lampoon the opposing party president. So we will do that here today. And so if you want to be a part of the program, my friends, of course, jump into the chat wherever it is you're watching it, on YouTube, on Rumble, on Facebook, wherever it is. I see all the chats coming in. Of course, though, the best place to be is over supporting the program at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We do some member-only content over there. We did a morning stream today, morning for me. And we like to hang out, post some stuff in between. And I'm trying to get, a little bit more comfortable posting more stuff. And so come and join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Also, don't forget to support our sponsors of the show, our friends over at 4patriots.com. Survival food, survival gear. Use promo code Robert at 4patriots.com to get 10% off. And of course, our law firm. If you or anybody you know or love is in Arizona and we're charged with a crime, send them over to us, rrlawaz.com. We have a mission to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. All right, my friends. And so let's get right into it. The top 10 stories that the media ignored in 2022. What else are they going to ignore in 2023? I mean, there was a lot that they didn't talk about in 2022 for good reason. They had a pretty big election coming up. There's a lot of narratives that they want to continue to shove down everybody's gullet. And so we have this incredible article from Wendell Husebo over at Breitbart.com. Top 10 stories that the media ignored in 2022. And look at the image used in this article. Hunter and Joe, father and son, arm in arm, raising their hands above their heads because they have been selected to lead America into the new year. Beautiful. This is what Wendell writes. He says that the establishment media losers ignored, I'm going to insert some commentary here, ignored multiple relevant news stories in 2022. These are the top 10. 1, the ignoring of election deniers Hakeem Jeffries and his prior assault on democracy. You remember this guy who's going to be the new leader of the Democrats in the House, the newly elected House Democrat leader? They didn't even call him an insurrectionist, even though he's an election denier. In November, 10 establishment media outlets, including Fox News, did not seem to care that Rep. Hakeem Jeffries, who became the House Democrat minority leader, was an election denier. Following the midterms, many media outlets constantly pointed to particular Republicans as election deniers, right? Conspiracy theorists, constantly. Election misinformation, MAGA, insurrection, murder, everybody. The media failed to hold Democrat Jeffries to the same standard. He attacked democracy by not denying the legitimacy of prior elections, and we talked about that previously here on the show. We played several clips of him in prior elections where he said, well, I wasn't real sure, the Russians and they may have hacked the election, and legitimacy and all that stuff. We played 3 different clips from him. Yeah, they ignored that one. Double standards. Only the Republicans can be deniers, not the others. The media also ignore the Twitter file drop. Oh man, we're still in the middle of this and they are still ignoring it. In December, Wendell says the media ignored the 7th Twitter file release that exposed the corrupt FBI and the laptop story. Said that Los Angeles Times, all of them, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico's Playbook, Politico's Punchbowl News, and all of them, all these so-called journalists, these people who, they flash their credentials around. They're like, I read the work of Washington Post. They all ignored the FBI and the intelligence community's efforts. New York Post revealed the contents, according to journalist Michael Schellenberger. So they ignored all of that. Now, the media also ignored in Article 3 the Durham investigation of Hillary Clinton's operatives. Not a whole lot of conversation about the Durham investigation, but again, the Durham investigation, what has that really produced? Not much. He says that in February, the media ignored news from John Durham that alleged Hillary Clinton spied on Donald Trump. All of that, as we covered here in the Michael Sussman trial, in my opinion, was extremely true, like the facts on their face. anybody reasonable could connect the dots. The problem is, of course, this was in Washington, D.C. So the D.C. jurors just said there were more important things to focus on than Michael Sussman's alleged collusion with the Clinton campaign to try to infiltrate the FBI and plant a fake story. So I guess they ignored all of that, but I don't know that that's the John Durham investigation. Well, in number 4, Wendell says, media ignores Joe Biden's involvement with Theranos. This was Elizabeth Holmes. She was the founder of Theranos. This was that massive fraud where she was saying that they could test your blood instantly, right? You get one pinprick, you send it into Theranos, they do some magical pixie dust stuff on the blood. They can tell you everything you need to know. Well, it turns out it was all fraudulent. Just like most things in this country, or not most, but a lot of things are fraudulent. FTX was fraudulent. They were manipulating crypto. They were manipulating investment vehicles, lying to everybody about that. In other areas on Twitter, they were lying about free speech. They were lying about saying they were creating a safe public square. Elizabeth Holmes was doing the same thing, just with blood. They ran headlines about on their homepages about Holmes' conviction, but they didn't reference any stories of Joe Biden's involvement. Even though Biden praised Holmes in 2015 for, quote, maintaining the highest standards in developing low-cost blood lab tests, the establishment ignored it all. The media also ignored it was wrong about Hunter Biden's laptop. In March, the media ignored its duty to come clean about its false reporting. The Huffington Post, The Intercept, and Mother Jones, they all failed to retract reporting on a now debunked Politico story from 2020 that claimed that Hunter's laptop was Russian disinfo. And we read through this one. This was the one signed by the 50 so-called experts. All of these non-experts with no intelligence signed this letter. They said that the Hunter Biden laptop story, quote, had all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. More than 50 senior intelligence officials. This came from Natasha Bertrand when she was posting this, I don't know, late October, just a short time before the November elections. The story was leaking. All of these idiots, former CIA directors or acting directors, Brennan, Leon Panetta, Michael Hayden, John McLaughlin, Michael Morrill. You know, in my humble opinion, I think that those people knew that this was legitimate. I think that the FBI knew because the FBI had the laptop. They had it in their possession as late as probably before this, December 2019. So when this was all being assembled, when this was all being written in October 2020, all of these ex-CIA people, unless they're just so dumb that they can't recognize, I've never worked in the CIA, all right, but we could see the materials. We talked about it on the show, looked about as real as anything. And it was real. So who was right? Everybody else or the losers in the former CIA? Okay. So yeah, this story is just, it seems like it's directly intending to change a narrative, which means it's dishonest, which means it's a lie. So I think that that's what all of these people who signed on to that story were doing. The media used the headline and they retweeted it, right? They spread it. Once one media entity writes an article, all of the rest of the people can copy and paste the headlines and they can say, oh, this reported over here, this reported over there. So they did that. Everybody copy and pasted it and they just spread it around like wildfire. Number 6, what else did the media ignore? The physical attack on a Republican candidate named General Don Buldo. In November, the media ignored a physical attack. He's a New Hampshire candidate. 3 top newspapers, New York Times, WAPO, and LA Times, all failed to recognize the physical attack that occurred on General Budok, that occurred moments before a key debate with Maggie Hassan. Why might they do that? Oh, yeah, because it would probably look like it was useful, right? It looked like it was an attack on a candidate that would garner sympathy for that candidate. And they did not want that to happen at all. Everybody ignored it. They failed to recognize it completely. Now, if those were reversed, right? If this was a Democrat who got attacked, who would not report on that? Right? Everybody would. Oh, this is a sign of the times. There's probably a MAGA insurrectionist who decided to do that. Right? So you can see how that sort of works out. Number 7, the media ignore alleged payouts to the Biden family detailed in Hunter's text messages. In April, the media reported that Hunter Biden received $4.8 million in payments from a Chinese energy company. And we talked a lot about this. Remember the interview with Garrett Ziegler from MarcoPoloUSA.org. He is the author of the Hunter Biden laptop report, which covered a lot of this. And everybody knew about it, but the media didn't want to talk about it. Yet it failed to mention that the payout mechanism by which the Biden family likely profited for peddling the influence. Hunter's text seemed to indicate that Joe Biden received 50% of his son's, quote, salary for a 30-year period. Hunter Biden was just the bagman running around, gathering the funds, and then handing them, half of them, right back over to daddy. The texts do not indicate when the 30 years began or ended, or whether Joe Biden is still a part of the payment scheme as president. Why wouldn't he be? Everything's just being held in escrow, and I'm sure it's a lot more money now. New York Times and the Washington Post decisions to ignore the inner workings of the Biden family is not surprising. The text could reveal the core of an entrenched business enterprise. The text also appeared to connect the Joe Biden family to the family's corrupt business dealings. Look at those two little lovebirds. Good business deal. Number 8 from Wendell. He says that CNN also fails in the top 10 stories that the media ignored in 2022. Number 8 is CNN fails to admit that the Hunter Biden laptop is authentic until 532 days after the initial report. That's real excellent job, CNN. Tremendous work. In March, CNN finally admitted that the laptop from hell was authentic, 532 days after the story broke, October 24th, 2022. The network lied to all of us. They said it was Russian disinformation and they said it was made up, but they do that regularly, so people just forget about it and move on. CNN only admitted Hunter's laptop was authentic after the New York Times verified it 2 weeks prior. It took the Times nearly 2 years to acknowledge that was authenticated as well. It was authenticated previously by Breitbart and Emma Jo Morris. Shout out to Emma. CNN's former president, Jeff Zucker, labeled it a Breitbart rabbit hole and unworthy of coverage. This guy, who's no longer with CNN, was manipulating the news during an election, a legitimate news story during an election. Nice. Number 9, most ignored stories. Brian Stelter. Oh, you remember him? He spent 0 seconds on his show discussing the Hunter Biden laptop story. Reliable sources. He also refused to acknowledge his claim that the laptop was Russian disinformation. So no mea culpa from him. After the New York Times admitted the laptop was authentic, instead of disclosing his role about spreading misinformation, this little insurrectionist, Stelter totally ignored his false claims on CNN and spoke a whopping 0 seconds about his role in pushing the false Russian disinformation narrative. Brian Stelter. And number 10, the final story from Wendell Husibo on Twitter, at Wendell Husibo, is the media ignored the handling of the Biden family business whistleblower intel. And they did. They covered this whole thing up maliciously. In September, the media ignored revelations that the FBI warned Facebook of an imminent dump of Russian propaganda. Yeah, okay. Before the story of the Hunter Biden laptop broke during 2020. Now, while the FBI was communicating with Facebook, the FBI's leadership blocked agents from investigating the laptop until after the election was decided. And that was our friend... his name is at the tip of my tongue. The guy, I can't think of his name, but he was the guy, Tebow, that's the guy. Tebow was that FBI agent who evidently gave that order that said, you're not allowed to investigate this stuff. It's too close to the election. Another agent here is being talked about here, Johnson. Story is ridiculous. So the intelligence officials couldn't get it right. They actively tried to reverse a story, and the media actively covered up many other stories in the meantime. Top 10 stories that the media ignored. Now, the question will be, of course, what happens in 2023? Will they continue to manipulate the news and to lie about what is actually happening? We'll say this is real, this is truthful. Can you please talk about this? You're the news provider. You're supposed to bring in the news to the people. Will you talk about this laptop? No, of course not. So it's, I think, exceedingly important in 2023 that alternative sources of media, alternative information supply chains are built and reconstructed so that these stories and these layers of communication can happen outside of the control of the old guard. And I think that's happening, and I'm looking forward to it. We also have a beautiful top 10 list. Now, this list is a lot of fun, but we can't go through the whole thing because we're also streaming on YouTube. And so I'll encourage you right now to go get the full list over from @RealBenSellers, because we're going to have to skip over one of his predictions. But it's a great list, so let's get right into it. Top 10 conspiracies in 2023, some of which might actually come true. That's according to @RealBenSellers. He's over there on Twitter, editor of Headline USA. You can visit them at headlineusa.com. And I'd encourage you to do that because there is a juicy, juicy list here. 10 conspiracies that may come true. He says will. Let's get into them. Before we check out some additional piggyback stories that we can add on top of this. One from 60 Minutes from the author of the book called The Population Bomb, and another story from Zelensky saying that the media is now going to be under a little bit more control in Ukraine. Let's go over to the story from Ben Sellers. This comes via headlineusa.com. Sellers writes, top 10 conspiracy theories that will be validated in 2023. Published December 26, 2022. Look at this very secretive handshake from the FBI. Going to be a good story. Ben Sellers writes, there has been a lot of talk lately about the word of the year. Some say it's gaslighting. Happens to be a personal favorite of his. Others say it's goblin mode. Bizarre term linked to Kanye West and others. In the spirit of New Year's predictions, he says, I think it is conspiracy theory. Like these, it is a term that's taken on new meaning in light of current events, and one that the left establishment hegemony has desperately sought to appropriate and weaponize for its own purposes. But in the next 12 months, he writes, we will see conservatives successfully reclaim it. Conspiracy. In fact, the early adopters are already lighting the way on social media. Elon Musk said this. He was on an interview with the All In podcast, a podcast I've recommended here, especially if you're into finance. This is David Sachs, who's a co-host of the podcast, and he was in the middle of the podcast. David Sachs is a former executive at PayPal, and he had worked there during the initial era when Elon evidently was there along with Peter Thiel. And so they host a podcast, and David Sachs is now working with Elon, sort of a regrouping of the original minds, and they're working through some of the issues at Twitter. David Sachs is a very big software as a service individual, SaaS founder. So he does a lot of this work. He's helping Elon get some bearings over there at Twitter. In the middle of the podcast, Elon shows up. Okay, so they're at Twitter HQ, and they're talking about conspiracy theories. Here's what Elon says.
I mean, to be totally frank, almost every conspiracy theory that people had about Twitter turned out to be true.
Oh.
So.
Yeah. Uncomfortable laugh.
Is there a conspiracy theory about Twitter that didn't turn out to be true? So far, they've all turned out to be true. And if not, more true than people thought.
More true than people thought. Let's listen to that one more time. And you can see some of the uncomfortable laughs from everybody. This is Chamath Palihapitiya, who is sort of, a little bit more lefty than some of the others on the podcast. And he's a little uncomfortable there. And everybody's recognizing it's all true. Everything we thought was true is true.
I mean, to be totally frank, almost every conspiracy theory that people had about Twitter turned out to be true. So, like, is there a conspiracy theory about Twitter that didn't turn out to be true?
No.
So far, they've all turned out to be true, and if not, more true than people thought.
And wait until we see what's next. Fauci's going to have a drop. Fauci files are dropping soon. There's going to be a whole lot more. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a things aren't adding up and it's pretty obvious theorist. Yeah, all the conspiracy theorists, many of them have turned out to be true. Gretchen shared that link too. We have some more memes being shared. But the question is being asked, what is the current conspiracy theory that will be true in 6 months? Ben writes, increasingly, we are seeing the corruption of the Biden administration start to come out in the wash, with growing backlash. Questions that the media tried to deny and deride in service to their agenda have since had the curtain lifted. More and more, even averred leftist ideologues like ex-Planned Parenthood leader Lena Wen are admitting they lied about various aspects of the pandemic. Twitter files have also played a huge role in exposing the unseemly and unconstitutional collusion between U.S. spy agencies and big tech. A flurry of GOP-led investigations in the House will bring in at least a semblance of accountability back to the swamp. Conspiracy theory is the word that's being bandied about. And so I'm fast forwarding through some of this. I'll invite you to go over to Real Ben Sellers and follow and read the full article for yourself. But he says, with that in mind, here are the top 10 things that the powers that be in DC have yet to cop to, have yet to admit they are responsible for, but which will soon be impossible to ignore in no particular order. Number 1, Ben Sellers writes, top 10 2023 conspiracy that will likely be true is the role that the intel community and the Justice Department played in fomenting violence through PSYOPs on J6. It will be exposed. Sadly, in their expected counter-investigation responding to the Pelosi-run J6 committee, even House Republicans may withhold state secrets from us. But the FBI's damaging partisan conduct has generated a multitude of whistleblowing defectors who should be willing to shed light on the dubious allegations of right-wing extremism and violence at the U.S. Capitol. He says in 2017, Charlottesville was its dress rehearsal. And we've talked a lot about this here on this channel. We've talked about the various criminal charges that have been filed in some of the cases, including Thomas Caldwell's case. His lawyers have said and made the allegations in their defense filings that there were many FBI, I think ATF, even potentially DHS agents who were infiltrating the crowds. We know that guys like Ray Epps may not have been an actual Fed. I don't know. But he didn't get prosecuted for committing a lot of the same conduct that a lot of other people have been prosecuted for. So what's the difference there? Okay, we saw all sorts of missing bits of evidence where we're looking for what should be one of the most secure buildings in the entire world. They had some security footage, but not all of it. We can't see it all. And some of the stuff that we did see, we saw literal doors being opened and people being waved in as cops were getting stand down orders. They were being tapped on the shoulder, and then people were being escorted into the Capitol. And then how many of those people have been prosecuted and charged? How many of them just took plea deals because they didn't have the money and the resources to get lawyers and battle against the federal government, which just now appropriated itself something like $2 billion for J6 crimes just in this new $1.7 trillion stimulus? Nuts. So as more and more of this comes out, I think it becomes clearer and clearer by the day. Either one, the FBI, DHS, Metro PD, Capitol Hill PD, the Mint Police, DHS, all of them are grossly incompetent because they can't figure out how to protect the Capitol building on a very important day when there were already all sorts of warnings and messages about protests taking place in the area. Incompetent or complicit. Or they just said, well, we just don't have to bring the National Guard out here. Hopefully everything goes okay. You get Nancy Pelosi staying there and saying on camera with her children in the area, her telling them, I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for this day. Because they knew that Donald Trump was a threat. They wanted to take him out permanently. This was a beautiful way to do that. We fast forward through conspiracy number 2. It's pandemic related. And if you want to see what real Ben Sellers says about it, go on over to headlineusa.com and read his article. Number 3, 2023 conspiracy that is likely to come true. The scope of China's control over the U.S. government will become even clearer. We know about the various financial ties between the Biden family and the CCP. We know that other top leaders, including Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, are heavily invested in Chinese industry. But what we have yet to fully explore is the way that China-linked companies like BlackRock have also completely infiltrated the White House and are effectively writing U.S. foreign policy. Another issue we've talked a lot about here. Why does it seem like every single politician is so scared to death of China? Nobody wants to do anything about it. And same goes for all of the big tech CEOs and all the big conglomerates. Nobody wants to say anything about it. They're all petrified. Take a look at the clear understanding amongst officials in the federal government about what TikTok is and what that does to people, how that commandeers people's brains, how it's poisoning in individuals and youth all across America, how it could very likely maybe is being used as an influence operation. You just adjust the knobs on the algorithm and people start thinking differently. You understand that huge batches of data of American citizens are just being siphoned off like a straw into China. All of the politicians know it. What the heck good is the CIA, DHS, FBI, all of these people for if they can't even deal with an obvious foreign adversarial threat like that? Well, it's because they're all bought and paid for, right? They've all got deals over there. Another great point from Ben Sellers. Number 4, he writes, the true nature of David DePape's relationship with Pelosi will also be revealed. Another story that we talked about. He says, while court hearings have kept a tight lid on the evidence in the Paul Pelosi case, including the body cam footage, remember we spent time here talking about who opened the door. There were 2 conflicting police reports. One version was the cops opened the door, which makes sense because Paul Pelosi is being attacked inside his residence. He can't come and open the door. So the cops, he's under attack. They come, they open the door, they walk in, he's getting attacked with a hammer. But that was different. That's what the FBI said. Local cops didn't say that. Local cops said that Paul Pelosi opened the door, which is a strange thing because if he opened the door, why would he also walk back inside and then engage with David DePape and then get struck in the head with a hammer? If the cops are there at your front door and you open the door, don't you step outside and say there's a psycho person with a hammer inside? Very strange. Body cam footage, all of that. Very strange situation. Says that it's going to be harder for Nancy Pelosi to flex her authority after no longer being the Speaker of the House. It's very clear that DePape is no right-wing extremist. And there's more going on here. And DePape, right, we saw the FBI showing up at his residence or where he was living, and there were interesting signs and causes that they appeared to be invested in at the residence. So the narrative that this was a right-wing conspiracy, that this was a MAGA insurrectionist, this was all right before the election. They wanted that story. It was all over the place. Paul Pelosi got attacked. Nancy Pelosi was crying all over the media. He got attacked. And I'm sure she was sad. Nobody wants their husband cracked in the head with a hammer, but nobody also wants to be blamed for cracking their husband in the head with a hammer. That's what they had done. they had said through Biden that every Republican out there was a MAGA extremist unless you disavowed Trump and voted Democrat, essentially. Number 5, conspiracy theories that will be proven true in 2023. Ben Sellers writes, we will find out that Trump purloined and what's in Trump's purloined Mar-a-Lago files. The DOJ probe now is continuing on, but it switched over to a special counsel investigation by Jack Smith, the guy from the International Criminal Court. He was appointed special counsel. The DOJ is sort of no longer in official control of the Trump Mar-a-Lago investigation. Eventually, the clock's going to run out, writes Ben, and says that the CYA operation of the FBI will come out in full effect, saying that they may have been trying to cover this up, trying to regain documents. They were concerned that Trump had something that they didn't want him to have. And he says, we'll learn more about that. We spent a lot of time on this as well. And we'll see. All of it is in limbo until the special counsel does something. Conspiracy theory number 6. We will learn what the Democrats intend to do with Joe Biden and who will be tapped to replace him. Will it be Michelle Obama, as I and others have long predicted? Now, Michelle has said that she doesn't want it, right? She's openly said, I'm not into it. I don't like that lifestyle. I don't want to be the subject of all that attention. But isn't that kind of what they all say every time there's an ask about this? Oh, no, I could never be president. No, that job's too much. You're silly for asking. They run like 6 months later, right? Or could it be another yet unknown figure who has been carefully vetted and groomed in secret, like her husband, Barack? Now, I was somebody who thought that Joe Biden was going to get obliterated in the midterms and then would be sort of escorted out of there. That was on the presumption that Kamala Harris would be a nice fill-in. Kamala Harris has turned out to be kind of a disaster as well. And so that's sort of, that old switcheroo, just has been sort of a bad thing. So if Michelle Obama comes in, then that means that Kamala, they've already made the decision on that and that they're not liking what they're seeing out of her. It could also go the other way, right? Michelle Obama, they could puff up the VP. Kamala Harris could get a makeover, I suppose. We'll see. Or it could be another person we don't know, or Newsom. Michelle Obama? I don't know. Number 7, we will discover the truth about the U.S.-Ukrainian partnership to develop things in Ukraine. He says that all indications are that the country is a rat nest of CIA operations. And we'll learn a lot more about Ukraine. And there was an interesting story I saw on the Ukraine front. This came over from The Hill. The Hill writes that Zelensky now signs a new controversial law expanding the government power to regulate the media. This law now allows media groups and journalists in the country to be regulated. Signed this last week on Thursday. Media and the press said this is going to have a chilling effect on free speech. Under the new law, national television and radio broadcasting, whose members are appointed by the president's administration and by parliament, will have broader authority over the media. The regulatory agency can effectively now shut down news sites that aren't registered. That's beautiful. In a statement last month, the National Union said the bill posed a threat to press freedom. They say these powers are clearly excessive. No one has yet managed to tame freedom of speech. It won't work this time either. Zelensky's administration has been accused of suppressing press freedom. He first ordered the drafting of a new law to boost media regulation 2019, the year he entered office. Drafting of a new law to boost media regulation in 2019. That's interesting. But Russia-Ukraine invasion, that happened this year, February 24th, to be specific, of 2020, last year. Wow, I forgot what year it is. Holy crap. That's going to take a while. So you see here on February 24th, 2022, they were already drafting a new law to boost media regulation. before the Russian invasion took place. But as governments usually do, crises are excuses to do whatever the heck you want. The law was passed along with other several new statutes lawmakers passed on December 13th, was watered down. So, more free speech being silenced there as well as other places. And we go back to the stories. Ben Sellers, he continues. He says, the left, one of the conspiracies that will come true in 2023 is the left's plan to normalize and mainstream this bad stuff with children. Don't like to say it for the YouTubes. The initial push to get children involved in bad things didn't work so hot for Disney and may have fallen flat. But he says that they're going to redouble their efforts to manipulate young minds by acclimating children at an early age. They can add another weapon in their quiver, cultivating ignorance and elevating racial grievances so that the plebeian class is as pliable as possible. Be vigilant, my friends. No joke on that. Number 9, Ben Sellers writes, a conspiracy for 2023 coming true is the World Economic Forum will lead the way in trying to turn humans into glorified matrix batteries. AI, metaverse, no more office culture, digital passports, CBDCs, guaranteed universal basic income, and the ever-increasing scarcity of resources, saying they're going to globalize and collectivize all nations under a one-world government. And we've shared clips on the channel here of these types of statements from the World Economic Forum where they've said things. There was one clip of one individual who said that they were creating a new platform that would allow you to engage with it, almost like a software that you would just get your food from, you'd get your supplies from. So it's almost like an Amazon service, right? You go on, I'm going to order this stuff. They give it to you. And it's universal, it's basic, you get all this free stuff. But in addition to measuring the value of that, right, how much that costs, so you'd get a stipend, they're also counting things like calories, and how much carbon that costs to produce, and how much supplies and materials you're using, and they can just tie that right into your passport or whatever it is the new superstructure looks like. They're building it. China has it. You have trays, you just scan your food. It tells you exactly what you ordered, right? And you just use that on a regular basis. You've seen what they've done with COVID in various places around the world. We also have, finally, from Ben Sellers at Real Ben Sellers, he says, lastly, the final 2023 conspiracy that's coming true. As we learn about the relationship between big tech and spy agencies, we'll see that our personal cell phones and devices are tracking everything. Knowing what we know about the FBI and the CIA and how much they've been manipulating everything, is there any possible way that they're not already engaging in warrantless domestic surveillance between Google, Apple, all of the other big tech platforms already around the clock? Is there any basis in believing that they can't just turn on your camera, turn on your phone if they really wanted to? You think they could do that? Probably. Incredible piece over from Ben Sellers at headlineusa.com. I'd really encourage you to go follow him on Twitter at Real Ben Sellers. This is the title. This is the headline. This is where it came from. Very fun article. I hope he's wrong about all of it, but probably won't be, unfortunately. And we will be here continuing to cover that as the year develops. And so shout out to Ben Sellers for that great piece. Now, we also had this interesting clip that came out sort of on this vein. What is 2023 going to bring? What's it going to hold for all of us? Well, we had this interesting clip. Now, this individual that we're going to hear from is the author of a book called The Population Bomb. And he was on with 60 Minutes, and I'm going to spare us some of this. They kind of walk us through, the whole world's going to die. The story here is that these people are all focused on stopping climate change by working together, right? All of our bureaucrats assemble, kind of one of those things. And they're going to solve things, but really they don't solve anything. That's why they're bureaucrats. If they solved things, they wouldn't be bureaucrats. They'd be doing something else productive and useful. But they say that they're going to fix climate change, right? And they have these big stupid meetings every year. Been doing it basically my whole life. And they say that they're going to come out with a resolution. Guess what? Hasn't happened. Nothing's changed. Everything's the same. They need more money. They need more power. They need more responsibilities. Give them more. All because this goofball wrote this book called The Population Bomb. Now, if you've been looking at modern demographics around the world, many people are saying there is no concern of human population overpopulating the planet, causing us all to die. They recognize that as populations and demographics become richer, people actually have less babies. And what that means is that the world is going through a massive population decline at some point in the future. They don't know exactly when it's going to be, but the population will cap out at a certain level and then start to decline again as the rest of the world becomes rich. And so the major crisis, according to some people who are more familiar with existential crises than I am, guys like Elon Musk, says that more important than getting to Mars is reversing the population decline. That's why he's got like 10 kids now. This person says that this is a mistake. He talked about this 50 years ago or whenever he wrote his terrible book. But now he is continuing to press this story.
Biologist Paul Ehrlich. You know that there is no political will to do any of the things that you're recommending.
Because you're nuts.
I know there's no political will to do any of the things that I'm concerned with, which is exactly why I and the vast majority of my colleagues think we've had it, that the next few decades will be the end of the kind of civilization we're used to.
In
the end of the civilization that we're used to. The population bomb,
years.
This ridiculous book that he wrote, if you take a look at what Wikipedia says, he became well known for the controversial 1968 book called The Population Bomb, which he authored with his wife, Anne. They famously stated that, quote, in the 1970s, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death in spite of any crash programs embarked now upon. They want coercion to deal with this. Eliminating tax benefits for children. He's a ridiculous dude. So, right, that's what they're talking about, right? And I think that that's kind of not necessarily what they're predicting is going to happen naturally, and we have to work to stop it. I think that's what they want to see happen. They'd like to see a lot less people, a lot more control. We have to do something or we're all going to die. And guess who's perfectly prepared to do something? Guess who is a scientist who's been working on this issue for 50 years? That guy. Great. So the World Economic Forum, we'll just bring him right over, put him on the payroll. Life will be great. Okay, my friends. And so all of that is the top 10 conspiracies in 2023. And it's going to be a heck of a year. We look forward to driving through all of it with you together. I hope you join us. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. And so we have 3 more top 10 lists to get to. We're going to hear from, California. We're going back over to Breitbart. They're going to tell us about the top 5 crazy California laws, including the law about becoming a transgender sanctuary state, which is going to have some serious repercussions. We'll see how that law lasts. We also have the top 10 Biden gaffes, showing that he's got some serious, cognitive decline. And we have the top 25 worst Biden moments over the last year. But first, let's take a quick break and listen to our friends over at 4patriots.com while we rehydrate our mouths and do not become parchment paper. My friends, a food shortage could be coming. Even in the United States, experts have written about this as recently as July. Drought, inflation, even new policies are pushing America's food supply near its breaking point. That's why survival food is more important now than ever. And you can create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits ever. This is not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25 years super survival food, hand-packed right in family-owned facilities in the United States, giving jobs to over 200 Americans. The kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, And they stack easily. They have different delicious breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and you can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. Just add boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com, use code Robert to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including this 3-month survival kit. You'll get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, plus free shipping on orders over $97. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Go to 4patriots.com, use code Robert to get 10% off. That's 4patriots.com. Use code Robert. Start building your own stockpile today. Yes, that's right, my friends. Go on over there to 4patriots.com. Great company. We appreciate them for supporting the work that we do here. But now let's get right back into it because we have 3 more top lists to get to. And we're going to start by going to California and listening to this guy, Gavin Newsom, who looks very confused in this GIF. The top 5 crazy California laws. It's a crazy state. They're doing a lot of crazy things. And unfortunately, they are spreading around the country. Arizona is getting all of their leftovers. Rain voters were turning blue. It's gross. They're also Californicating all the rest of America. And so what's happening there? And are we going to see Gavin Newsom run for president? Is some of this stuff coming to the rest of the world? Let's see what they are up to. Several radical laws going into effect this year. This article comes from Joel Pollack over at Breitbart. The title is called California's Crazy New Year, 5 radical laws that go into effect. Only one is on hold. We have the 5 most radical laws plus one currently on hold. The first is SB 107. This one is raising a lot of eyebrows. The Sanctuary State for Transgender Kids Law. This law, signed by Governor Gavin Newsom, protects the use of drugs or surgery to provide so-called gender-affirming care to children from other states where the use of those treatments is restricted or criminalized. It prohibits doctors from releasing information to other states, and it prohibits California courts from interfering in child custody over such treatments. Here's the text of the bill. You can see it's quite long. Passed in September. The U.S. Constitution requires a state generally to give full faith and credit to public acts. Existing law authorizes the extradition of a person and so on. This bill would prohibit a provider of health care from releasing information outside of the state. This bill would prohibit the enforcement of an order based on another state's law authorizing a child to be removed from the state. So, for example, if you had one parent who was in Texas and another parent who took a child out of Texas and took them to California and wanted that child to go through transition procedures or, whatever the process is there, and Texas said, no, you can't do that, bring that kid back here, they would not honor it. And so the U.S. Constitution, as they even admit here, it generally requires a state to give full faith and credit to other states, of every other state. But they're not going to do that here. This came out from Scott Wiener. He writes a lot of these bills. The law will be amended to be changed as follows. You see a couple additions here. Talking about amending for subpoenas. Civil procedure is amended. So it's a pretty hefty bill. It's sort of defining a bunch of things. It's going through civil code. It's going to family code now. Here's what it says for family code. A court of this state that has jurisdiction to make child custody determinations may decline to exercise its jurisdiction if it determines it is an inconvenient forum. Okay. Big bill. Lots to go through. That's now in effect. So there was a situation where a Texas father, this is actually coming up. let's see if we can find a recent article on this. Here. Five hours ago, this is the story from the father who's actually going through this. This came over from ChristianPost.com. Texas Supreme Court rules against the father seeking to prevent the, quote, chemical castration of his son. Here's a picture of father and son. A Texas father has accused the Texas Supreme Court of being a party to child abuse. The person's name is Jeff Younger, gained national attention for his opposition to his ex-wife efforts to identify their son, James, as a girl named Luna. He went on Twitter on Friday at the end of 2022 and said, "The Supreme Court of Texas denied my mandamus, effectively terminating my parental rights. My children are now subject to being castrated in California chemically." He says, "Texas is an empire of child abuse led by Texas judges." The justices wrote in their denial, this is in the petition, it looks like, in the denial. I guess we can read this. Let me pull this up so we can mark this puppy up. Get that red pen out. In the matter involving Jeff Younger out of the Supreme Court of Texas, Justice Blacklock writes, denying the petition for a writ of mandamus. This is the father of the son arguing, asking the court to do something. This case arises from a child custody dispute involving twin boys, one of whom, they say, has exhibited confusion about his gender. Mother, who has custody of the boys, recently moved to California after a Dallas County District Court in September authorized the mother to reside with children anywhere in the country. Texas said in Dallas County, you can leave. Father, the relator in this court, so the person who's related to the child, is concerned that mother's move to California will bring about the medical, quote, transitioning of his son. 3 months after the district court authorized the move to California, father belatedly seeks an emergency order from this court requiring their return. The judge says, I concur in the court's denial of the petition because father is already in possession of a court order prohibiting mother from doing precisely what he fears she will do with his son. Oh. In October, the district court, with the mother's full agreement and indeed at her request, ordered that neither parent may treat a child with hormonal suppression therapy, puberty blockers, and or transition without consent of the parents or court order. This agreed order is binding on both parents and enforceable by contempt, no matter where they reside. The effect of the order is that neither parent has the legal authority to consent unilaterally to gender transition therapy, whether that therapy takes place in California, Texas, or elsewhere. As long as this order is in effect, mother's parental rights do not include the right to obtain therapy, gender transition therapy for her son. That is just as much the case in California as it is in Texas. Well, we don't know. We don't know about that now. Okay, so this is the question now. This may have been true when this got published on December 30th, but what now about January 1? If the mother decided to do it, okay, the understanding is that from the new California law, it is a sanctuary state. It prohibits doctors from releasing information to other states and prohibits California courts from interfering in child custody over such treatments. It says that it protects the use of drugs or surgery where the use of other treatments is restricted or criminalized. Okay, So, right, I guess the question here is whether or not the mother is going to adhere to this rule adhere to this. Mother freely acknowledges that she is bound by this order in both Texas and California. So if mom says, I'll adhere to that, mother has flatly denied to this court that she'll seek to evade this thing while she's in California. Should she fail to honor her promise, contempt of this court's order would not be her only concern. Father believes that California enactment of the bill will enable mother to evade the Texas court order. But father misreads California's new law. The judge says, by my reading, father's fears are no more likely to be realized than they would be before the bill. The judge says, described by its lead author as a trans refuge bill designed in part to respond to executive and legislative action in Texas. Footnote 1. This is from Scott Wiener. He wrote that in a press release. Okay, so he's like actively campaigning for this. He says it is going to be a refuge for trans kids and their families. Come to California. It's going to be a safe place for you. Like if you're bring your kid from away from dad kind of a thing, right? So, but the judge says, yeah, he did call it a trans refuge bill. And the bill certainly does cast a wide net in pursuit of its objective. The bill contains several provisions barring enforcement in California of, quote, a law of another state or another state's law that prohibits that gender-affirming care. Thus, says the judge, SB 107, this bill, as advertised and as written, is California's response to other states' legislative enactments and rules outlawing gender transition therapy. All right, so California, they're great with transition therapy. Texas, not so much. While SB 107's position on other states' laws is clear, he says, I see no provision in the bill that would alter the enforceability of a Texas court order requiring divorced parents to agree to therapy. So he doesn't see anything in that bill. Now, as we just read through, right? Obviously, we didn't read through the full bill. This is the full bill here. And it's big, which means there's a lot of gray area in there. Looks like a lot of new stuff. All these amendments, okay, amended to read. So, right, I don't know if they're inserting this in the bill or just modifying. In Arizona, when we have these things, they'll give you sort of what looks like a change record, a change log, right, on these bills. So they'll strike out stuff that got deleted. They'll put the new stuff in blue. Old stuff is out in red. So I don't know what is actually being inserted or changed, but it's a pretty big bill there. The judge says, Father reads the bill's prohibitions on enforcement of another state law against gender therapy as a prohibition on enforcement. It is not. A court order allocating the parental rights of divorced parents based on case-specific findings is in no way a law of another state. Okay, so he's saying that the judge is distinguishing between a court order and a law of another state. California is responding to laws of another state. He's saying that court orders, yeah, this is the unconstitutional part of this, where the judge is saying, look, in the very unlikely event that California courts interpreted their statute in such an odd way, they would, of course, run headlong into the full faith and credit clause. Okay, so the Texas courts are referring us back over to the U.S. Constitution, and they say, hey, the Constitution says you can't do that. But my friends in Texas, California doesn't give a crap about the U.S. Constitution. Are you nuts? They don't care about that at all. And they'll do whatever they want. So, okay. So, all right. That's nice that he thinks that they'll abide by that. We'll see. The bill's authors were likely aware of the prevailing interpretation of the full faith and credit clause, under which states have some leeway to deny enforcement of other state laws, but little to deny other judgments. We'll see. U.S. Supreme Court decision supports roving public policy about judgments, right? One state judgment gets full faith and credit in another state. We'll see. You know, the author of the bill literally, I think, is trying to do something kind of cutesy here. Sort of like what happened with some of the abortion laws, right? Trying to sort of manipulate things and bring this to a head. We'll see if it does. Yeah, the judge acknowledges this. This is fun. Understanding this important distinction, evident throughout the text of the bill, between another state's law, there's a quote, between another state's law, He says, while SB 107 treads close to territory prohibited by the full faith and credit clause, very close, and ultimately may be found to transgress it in various ways, nowhere does the bill purport to prevent enforcement of California out-of-state child custody orders establishing which parents may consent to gender transition therapy. This is wild. So this judge is acknowledging this law is like, it may actually transgress the full faith and credit clause. He says it right here. May ultimately be found to violate it in various ways, but not in the way that dad is complaining about right now. And then if you rewind this, it's just like, and we have faith that the California courts are going to give full faith and credit to our judgments. It's like just, delusional, honestly. It's like, are you crazy? They're not going to do that. They wrote the bill for this. They wrote the bill to push up against this potential constitutional limitation. So the judges say, okay, to summarize, under an existing Texas court order that mother agreed to and that mother acknowledges is binding on her, so that's the safety valve. But if mom decides, well, we're just going to go get some treatment, and she goes into California, she goes into a clinic, I don't think she's going to, she's not going to have to report it out. And if the clinic just says, yeah, this is California law, then I'm not sure he can do anything about it. He'd have to file something there, and then the California courts would have to step in and address it. But Texas is putting a lot of faith in the California courts, faith that I don't have. Mother lacks the legal right to consent to gender transition therapy for her son, says the court. This legal disability is just as real in California as it is in Texas, and mother readily acknowledges this as well. When a custody order specifies that joint parental consent is required, then a California doctor, just like a Texas doctor, must ensure that the appropriate parents have consented to treatment administered to their children. Footnote 2, this is a California Superior Court case from 2008. Again, before the law went into effect, before all of that law went into effect. Under the district court's order, any doctor in any state giving gender transition therapy would have to talk to the father and get consent. They say nothing in the law changes that. Father's concern is that California court could undermine the Texas order at the mother's request. He points to a different provision of the law, says that because the child has been unable to obtain these things, that the state could act under emergency jurisdiction. The court says no, to obtain that emergency order, there would still be safeguards. Mother would have to take the position that there's an existing order that's an emergency threat. Mother has repeatedly asserted that the Texas order is desirable and in the child's best interests. Mother would have to claim a very severe, dire emergency. California court would then have to say it is an emergency and then take an extraordinarily unusual step of issuing an emergency order. Judge basically says, no, this is too tenuous. The speculation here is about what other courts might do in the future. The only court to have acted so far here has preserved the father's right to have a say in gender transition therapy. The right is enforceable in California. He says that might raise, there might be another case where this pops up, but that is not this case. Right. And I think the judge is right about this. So either this case will turn into a case that is an issue. Like if the mother just decides to switch, this now suddenly will become a case. If California just does something a little bit questionable, this will become a case. But right now it's all kind of quiet. The judge is like, well, the wife's not saying anything about this. And technically I don't see a way for her to do it. If she does, if California interprets it differently, which I think is, sort of a high likelihood because it's not Texas, then the judge is saying, come back again at a later time, then it will be ripe. But it's not now. Interesting. I didn't realize there was a full opinion on that, so I'm glad we just kind of came across that kind of accidentally as we did. But that is a very interesting new law that will be signed into effect in California. We also have AB 2098. Number 2 in the list of California's craziest laws. This is the new COVID misinformation law. This law, signed into law in September, requires California's medical licensing boards to take disciplinary action against doctors who are involved with the dissemination of misinformation related to the pandemic. The law does not take into account the fact that authorities like Anthony Fauci have changed their recommendation over time. Yeah, and I read more about this, right? The law requires your licensing board to take disciplinary actions if you disseminate misinformation. Okay, so if you get on Twitter, you're a California doctor, and you say something that goes against the CDC and somebody reports you for mis or disinformation, the licensing board has to take action against that person. This is, I mean, it's an absolute attack on free speech. That's crazy, but evidently that's what they're doing. Let's take a quick look. Actually, I think that's linking us to the same stuff. Okay, so we'll move on. They're also decriminalizing jaywalking in California because of racism. Freedom to Walk Act. It says that jaywalking is a racist crime because it's enforced unevenly. All right, so you can walk all across the streets in California now. It's going to be a free-for-all. Drive carefully. SB 1375 in California. This one allows nurses to perform abortions without doctors. Great. This law attempts to expand access to abortion by allowing qualified nurses to perform certain abortion procedures in the first trimester. This new law will take effect alongside a new provision in California's Constitution, passed by a referendum, guaranteeing the right to abortion and contraception. Yeah, I mean, eventually, California, you can probably I don't know, Uberize abortions and probably drive-throughs, and they'll come to you, they just come right to your place. There's Uber it, star ratings and whatever. All right, so number 5, decriminalizing loitering for prostitution. Another Scott Wiener law. He comes from San Francisco. Very interesting fella. Decriminalizes loitering in public for prostitution. That's still a crime. But the loitering part, they want to take care of that part. That's also a crime. They want to remove that. Also allows for those convicted of loitering to petition courts for dismissal. The law aims to remove the social stigma of sex workers. Comes across at a time where there's a statewide crime wave. So that's what's going on in California. Now, as we talked about, right, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there about stuff that might happen in 2023. We talked all about that with real Ben Sellers. And if you think it's crazy, it's not really that crazy because much of it is happening in California as we speak. We'll, of course, continue to cover it. Thank you for subscribing and joining us as we do. All right, and we've got 2 more best ofs before we wrap this up. Joe Biden and top 10 lists. We've got the top 10 Biden gaffes showing that he's not doing so hot there up in the brain. And then another top 25 worst Biden moments from the last year. And there were a lot of them. So let's dig right in. We have Biden's top 10 gaffes. The blunders. This article is written by Jordan Boyd, posted December 30th, 2022. These are Biden's top 10 blunders that prove he's in cognitive decline. And I encourage you to follow Jordan Boyd. She's over on Twitter at Jordan Boyd TX for Texas. Let's go through the story. She writes, "It's no secret Joe Biden's not doing so hot. Serial liar, 80-year-old, gaffe machine, stumbles all over the place. He's got some issues. Let's see what some of the most serious gaffes were." Charlie Spearing wrote this one. On January 4th, 2022, Joe Biden said during the new year, "It's great to be in 2020.
There's a lot of reason to be hopeful in 2020. But for God's sake, please take advantage of what's available.
And sometimes you make mistakes on the year. Like I just said, it was last year, 2020. What did I just say? But when you miss 2 years, that's kind of a big one. 2022 to 2020. It's kind of a big gap. Yeah. Not so good. Okay. But it's January 4th. Okay. You give that one to him. Here's another one. Number 2, Biden cusses out Fox journalist on a hot mic. He called Peter Doocy, one of our favorites here, a stupid son of a bee. And we remember that one. There's no clip here, but Joe Biden sat there after Peter Doocy said the following. Hey, Joe, you think inflation's a political liability in the midterms? Joe Biden muttered under his breath. He said, no, it's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bee, is what Biden said. Number 3, Biden calls for regime change in Russia, and he meant it. Uh-oh. Hardly a slip of the tongue. Problematic statement came in March when he publicly called for regime change in Russia. He said, for God's sake, this man cannot remain in power, he said during a speech.
For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Yikes, that's a pretty big statement there. So that means that the only resolution to this Russia-Ukraine situation is the removal of old Pooty Poo. We'll see if that is a good term for him. They called it a gaffe. White House couldn't decide between standing by it or downplaying them. Joe Biden gave a speech where he said, repeat the line, when they wanted him to say the line again.
Power. It is noteworthy that the percentage of women who register to vote and cast a ballot is consistently higher than the percentage of the men who do so. End of quote. Repeat the line. Women are not without electoral and or political, or maybe precise, not and or political power. That's another saying that you, the women of America, can determine the outcome of this issue.
I think we talked about this one. Did he say, let me repeat the line, or did he read end of quote, repeat the line?
Ballot is consistently higher than the percentage of the men who do so. End of quote. Repeat the line. Women are not without.
Okay, yeah, it's repeat the line, right? It says repeat the line. So if you were going to say something like, let me repeat that, right? If you're like, hey, look, Joe Biden is the worst president in American history. Let me say that again. Joe Biden is the worst president, right? If you were to say something like that, you would never say Joe Biden's the worst president in American history. Let me repeat that line. You would never say that. You just say, let me say that one more time, right?
Electoral and or political or.
All right, so that's another Joe Biden having a difficult time even reading from the teleprompter. We also had another one. There were retrospective edits. So they didn't include that in the actual transcripts. Number 5, Biden's biggest gaffes. Falsely claimed that he had cancer. That's why I and so many damn other people I grew up with have cancer, he says. Here's Biden from town hall. Biden says that his mother is using windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window, which is why I and so many damn other people have cancer.
And because it was a 4-lane highway that was accessible, my mother drove us, and rather than us be able to walk. And guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening? It had to put on their windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer. And why can't, for the longest time, Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation.
Joe's got cancer. Hopefully he's okay. Oh, no, the White House clarified. Joe Biden does not, in fact, have cancer. That's great news. Tremendous news. They posted this. POTUS clearly misspoke. Their doctor came out, posted a statement. He does not have cancer. Okay. Dementia, on the other hand, we're not sure about that one. We think he's mostly good, but definitely doesn't have cancer, probably. Number 6, Biden says that American troops are selfish. Wow, that's not appropriate at all. Here's what he says about the selfishness of American troops.
Bravery and selflessness and sacrifices.
Oh, that was just a flub.
We'll always honor the bravery and selflessness and sacrifices of the Americans who serve.
All right, so he just slipped up on that one. All right, okay, I get it. You can slip up. Selfishness, selflessness, that's a pretty close word. Biden calls the Holocaust honorable. What? All right, here's another one. He says, during a visit to Israel, Biden claimed that he was there to keep alive the truth and honor of the Holocaust. Oh, he corrected that one. The horror of the Holocaust. Yeah. He says, and to continue, which we must do every day, continue to bear witness, to keep alive the truth and the honor of the Holocaust. Horror of the Holocaust. Maybe he was trying to, I'm trying to look at it in a light most favorable to him. Maybe he was trying to, honor the memory, like you honor the memory, honor the importance type of a thing. Or he's got dementia. Number 8, where's Jackie? Perhaps the worst of Biden's 2022 blunders was when he tried to call upon Rep. Jackie Walorski, rest in peace, weeks after she died in a car accident. He said, Jackie, where are you? Where's Jackie? She must not be here. Here's the clip.
And I want to thank all of you here for including bipartisan elected officials like Representative Governor, Senator Braun, Senator Booker, Representative Jackie. Are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here to help make this a reality.
No, buddy. She died in a car accident. Yikes. All right. Probably want to make sure you're clear on that one before they give him the microphone. White House Press Secretary Karine tried to brush that one off. Remember, she said, no. No, it was just top of mind.
Return to this question of the Congresswoman, and I think we all totally get why she's top of mind. You've made that case pretty effectively. But I think the confusing part is why, if she and the family is top of mind, does the president think that she's living and in the room?
I don't find that confusing. I mean, I think many people can speak to sometimes when you have someone top of mind, they're a top of mind, exactly that. And it is also, if you put it into the context, it's not like it happened outside of context, right? It happened at an event where we were calling out the champions, congressional champions in particular, of this issue. This is an important issue when it comes to food insecurity, something that this administration has led on from the beginning of this administration, not just across the country, but also globally. You heard him talk about food insecurity last week at the UN and the investments that we have put forward as the United States of America in helping deal with that. He was at an event, you all saw, you all watched, which is why you're asking the question, right? Where he was calling out, again, congressional leaders, a bipartisan leadership that we have seen on this particular issue. And again, he's going to see her family in just 2 days. And she was on top of mind.
All right, top of mind. So you get the rest of that. That's what the White House did to explain it. Number 9, Biden's gaffes. Biden isn't particularly fond of people asking about his cognitive abilities, and he fell asleep on a different one, not this one. Here he is on 60 Minutes.
You are the oldest president ever.
Pretty good shape, huh?
Which leads to my next question. You are more aware of this than anyone. Some people ask whether you are fit for the job. And when you hear that, I wonder what you think.
Watch me.
Watch me.
I mean, honest to God, that's all I think. Watch me. If you think I don't have the energy level or the mental acuity, then that's one thing. It's another thing of just watch and keep my schedule, do what I'm doing. I think that I don't, when I sit down with our NATO allies and keep them together, I don't have them saying, wait a minute, well, how old are you? What they say? I mean, it's a matter of, that old expression, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. I mean, I respect the fact that people would say, you're old. But I think it relates to how much energy you have and whether or not the job you're doing is one consistent with what any person of any age would be able to do.
All right, so that's the president, and he later fell asleep at another interview.
I have not made that formal decision, but it's my intention to run again. And we have time to make that decision.
Dr. Biden is for it. Mr. President. Oh.
Dr. Biden thinks that, my wife thinks that, that we're doing something very important.
Oh, man. So hard to get through it. And you could hear him.
Dr. Biden is for it. Mr. President. Oh,
Dr. Biden
Wake
thinks
up! Oh no. And then Biden gets lost on a stage. This has happened many times, of course. Just sort of meanders about. Speech is over. Frozen? Other way? Look the other direction?
Mr. President, thank you.
Come over
At
here.
the end of such a momentous event, the word thank you seems kind of inadequate. But for all the millions whose lives will be saved, for the communities where life will be transformed, thank you. So thank you, President Biden, for your outstanding.
Oh my gosh, just painful. Some of those are painful indeed. And so those are the top 10 Biden dementia gaffes. More from at Jordan Boyd TX from the Federalist. But she wasn't alone because there was a lot of these clips. We also had another one assembled from Mr. Charlie Spearing, posted this one December 29th, 2022. Joe Biden's 25 worst moments of 2022. Let's see what they are. Joe Biden struggles with a sport coat, drops his aviators during a Kentucky trip. This came out from Charlie Spearing. And again, all of the articles that we're reviewing are linked in the description, along with links to their Twitter profiles as well. This is Joe Biden having a tough time getting out of the airplane. Glasses will drop. Sport coat on. It's just a rough day all around. And we're having a rough internet time on Twitter, too. All right, so you get the gist there. Now, Joe Biden is also corralled by the White House, by the Easter Bunny. This one was a really bad one. This one, I thought they almost killed the guy. You can see the panic in his face. Look, the Easter Bunny comes out. And we know now that there was a staffer in that Easter Bunny suit. That Easter Bunny wasn't there for the kids. That Easter Bunny was there to escort Joe Biden away. And you can see when the Easter Bunny gets him right there in between the ears, right there. Here, let's get it. Right there. I keep up. There it is. Petrified. Horror and fear. Absolute horror and fear. He thinks he's getting attacked. He's like, where's the Secret Service at, man? This bunny's going to take me out. He's scared to death. And you can see it. He doesn't even know. Here's another freeze frame. Look, watch it. It catches him over the shoulder. This bunny, he's talking to the press. And the bunny is like, stop talking to the press, right? I'm pretty sure there was a staffer in there. And as soon as this bunny comes over the shoulder, freeze frame this, enhance. Look. That is fear. He sees it coming right here. Oh my gosh, I'm being attacked by this bunny. Right there. You can see it right there. Absolute horror. Super slow-mo. Panic hits. Shock. Fear right there. Doesn't even understand. That is petrified, man. That poor guy is just horrified. And, he has no idea what's going on. And then she waves her hands. And then here it is. Total horror right there. Oh my gosh, I'm getting attacked by this Easter Bunny. And then she just escorts him right out. And so you can watch it again. We'll watch the other angle on this. Here, let's watch the full thing.
Oh, the Easter Bunny needs you, Mr. President.
Okay, here's another angle. What she targeted him. Okay, the Easter Bunny is not even there for the kids. Watch. The Easter Bunny comes out of, literally, just makes a beeline for the president. Stop talking to the press. Literally moves him away. The weirdest thing. Bye, Mr. President. Stop talking to everybody else. Like a presidential minder. Just to make sure he's not talking to people. Okay? Keep him away from the crowds. Weird. Go back over to the kids. Absolutely a weird situation. Anyways, that's our current president. So, number 23, Joe Biden drools over a gas-powered Corvette, urging Americans afterwards in a speech to buy electric cars. Here's Joe Biden. Fast forward.
gave you the stance for wheels for many wheels.
It's a nice ride.
And I think you're even going to be able to start it up. Isn't it? This is all, very specific. Look at the size of the screen. Give me enough space. And if you want to, I'll shut the door. And you just push the button just right there.
All right, so that's Joe Biden. Here's another one. He says, I and so damn many other people I grew up with have cancer. We covered that one. Joe Biden repeated a false war story at a town hall with veterans. Fact checkers have called him out, saying that he said evidently he repeated a false story about a soldier who did not want to receive a medal. Everything was wrong. Number 20, Joe Biden vows to shut down coal. He said this back in November, says we're going to be shutting down plants all across America and having wind and solar.
So it's going to become a wind generation. And all they're doing is they're going to save them a hell of a lot of money and using the same transmission line that transmitted the coal-fired electric on. We're going to be shutting these plants down all across America. And having wind and solar.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if, the media actually communicated that message to voters in Pennsylvania and other places, how that might have changed outcomes in certain elections. Joe Biden gripped Emmanuel Macron's hand for 42 seconds in one of the weirdest handshakes
Welcome
ever.
to the French.
We saw this one.
Welcome to the French. You here? Our troops.
Dans les moments de triomphe et d'épreuve, la France et les États-Unis affronteront l'avenir comme nous l'avons toujours fait, confiants dans nos capacités communes, soutenus par la force de nos valeurs partagées, sans se laisser décourager par les défis qui nous attendent. Et les liens que nous construisons aujourd'hui entre nos étudiants, nos entreprises, nos pionniers, permettront à notre alliance de continuer à prospérer et à se renforcer pendant les décennies à venir. Donc, bienvenue à nouveau, Monsieur le Président, et à la délégation française. Je suis honoré de vous avoir ici et je me réjouis de passer une merveilleuse journée ensemble. Que Dieu bénisse nos deux nations et que Dieu protège nos troupes.
All right, there you go. 40-something seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen.
All right, so interesting. We had another one. Joe Biden complains about Elon Musk buying Twitter. Said that they're spewing lies all over the place. Joe Biden was caught on a hot mic with this fella. I think we played this one on the show. Says that no one F's with a Biden.
Cameras behind the camera.
Thanks for everything. Thanks for coming down. We appreciate it. I'll keep the food.
No one fucks with Biden.
Oh, content warning.
I can't argue with your brothers outside the house.
That's exactly right.
Content warning. Yeah, no one F's with a Biden. If you do, he'll send his crackhead son over to your house to hit you with prostitutes. 16, Union Joe signs a bill to avoid a rail strike, shuts out railway workers. Number 15, Joe Biden admits he did not realize the seriousness of the infant formula. Also blamed Putin's price hike on inflation and high gas prices in number 14. Number 13, Joe Biden said that Americans purchasing semi-automatic weapons is just sick. It's just sick out there, man. Sick, man. Even though semi-automatic, I don't think he knows what that means, right? That's most weaponry. Number 12, Joe Biden said that Brittany Griner is an incomparable athlete who represents the best of America. Little bit of a... Joe Biden falsely claims that all mainstream religions support constitutional right to abortion. Interesting phrase. Interesting statement there. Number 10, Joe Biden says Republicans are immoral for blocking transgender surgeries.
It's not a joke, everybody. That's why we were defeated in 2018 when they tried to do it. We went to 54 states.
Oh, that's Joe Biden's 54 states comment. Barack Obama had one of those too. Joe Biden said that Putin needed to be removed from power. Joe Biden said, let me start off with 2 words. Made in America. That's 3. Didn't go to the border in Arizona. Did the fist bump with Mohammed bin Salman. An orchestrated fist bump, I'm sure, because they didn't want to do a handshake. He said in his Death to America speech that Republicans are insurrectionists that need to be dealt with as he spoke to us all from the gates of hell in front of the military, in front of the red lighting. I think that's my number one of the weirdest things ever. Falsely claimed that his son died in Iraq and asked where Jackie was. And then lastly, Biden falls off the bike, which, of course, this was the bike trip heard around the world. Here it is, one last time. Oh, man. And so, of course, those are some of Biden's greatest hits in 2022. And so I guess the question for you is, what was your favorite? What was your biggest gaffe? What's your best conspiracy list? It's sort of, what was your favorite list of all of the lists that we talked about today? Make a list of the lists out there. But that, my friends, was it for the show. We covered some serious ground here today. We had 5 lists we covered, and all of the articles are linked in the description, along with the links to the Twitter profiles for everybody who wrote them. And I'd encourage you to go follow everybody who dropped them today. Top 10 stories that the media ignored, covered all of those, some good ones in there. Top 10 conspiracies that is likely to be true, are likely to be true in 2023, covered those as well. The end of the world as we know it, coming up soon. We also have the top 5 crazy California laws, including some of their transgender sanctuary laws. Evidently, we'll see how those work out. And we read through the opinion piece, or the opinion that came out from the Texas Supreme Court. We also saw Biden's gaffes. 35 different stories from the president over the last year. And 2023 is going to bring us a whole lot more. And I'm looking forward to it. And I'm grateful that you are here joining us as we continue to cover it. Now it is time to hear from you, my friends. And so let's see what you're saying there in the chats, what your favorite lists are, what you think the biggest conspiracies that will come true will be in 2023. No doubt there will be a lot of them. I see Just Cause is in the house. I see Zulu's in the house. What's up, Zulu? Says, I'm perfectly satisfied with not Trump. Praise God. Just says, sorry, everyone worldwide. We know how hysterical we look on the world stage. It's rough. Here are a couple that came in to start some super chats on the program. Thank you guys for those. Random person 5185 says nothing, but sent in a super chat dono. Thank you, random person. Appreciate you on that one. Newbie of Death reviews stuff, says the media can ignore Dre, but they'll never forget about him. That's right, Newbie. Forgot about Dre. And Kareem says, thanks for another great show, Rob. Well, thank you, Kareem. It's a very slow news day today, obviously, as you could see. And so we were assembling some of the lists out there. I'm sure things will kick off into high gear tomorrow when everything opens back up. And we have some changing of the guards in Congress, and we got a new governor here in Arizona. It's disgusting today, but it's going to be, I think, a busy week. But we'll get back into all of that and more, of course, tomorrow. But thank you, Kareem, for that nice compliment. And we got a whole new year ahead of us. And so let's see what else is going on over on Twitter and on Rumble before we jump over to our locals after party on the day. We got some people over, hey, on the YouTube, on the Rumbles. We got shout out to Alan Harkin, who's in the house. Thank you, Alan. Alan says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Alan. I appreciate you being over there on Rumble. Says, so good to start 2023 off with another excellent, informative, and entertaining expose on our nation's latest debacles and tragic happenings. Keep up your awesome work. We need it. What a nice message. Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. Alan Harkin, 1972. Love that profile photo, too. It's great. Man, big, beautiful smile. I love it. And you're here. I appreciate the support in 2023. I think that there is going to be a lot to attend to in 2023. There's no question about that. And it's going to be a lot of fun to get to. And I appreciate you being over there on Rumble and supporting us over there. Paul Blart's over there. Candy Gas. Do Not Mind Me. Annie Get Your Gun is over there. All chatting away. I appreciate you guys. All right, guys. So that's over on the Rumble. Let's also go over to Twitter and see what we've got over on the Twitter comments thread. See if there's any comments over there. We got a couple viewers. 3. Yes. Sweet. Amazing. We also had a comment come in from Becky. Says, Ehrlich despises humanity. Nothing he says should be given the slightest credibility. Yes. Okay. So this is, this guy. This is the guy that we talked about. Alex Epstein, who wrote the book, I think Fossil Future. No? Yeah, he did. Fossil Future, which is sitting on my desk back there, says, why is 60 Minutes featuring Paul Ehrlich, the anti-human ecologist who has been a 180 degrees wrong for 55 years? Humanity's not sustainable, he said. Elon says he despises humanity. Nothing he says should be given the slightest credibility. True. Yeah, I mean, if you want less people, you sort of, it's because you don't appreciate people. So I agree with that one. From our friends on Twitter. Thank you for sharing that one over. We had some muted comments. Star Ali Mistriel says, the intelligence community were complicit in the Hunter Biden laptop from hell, plus other cover-ups. All right. Got a sneeze out of the way. All right. Let's make sure we don't have any mucus hanging out all over the place. All right. Good. Whew. All right. Almost got allergic on that one. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. The intelligence community, says Star Alley, we're complicit in the Hunter Biden laptop from hell plus other cover-ups. This has got to stop. Great show, Robert, and the mods. Shout out to the mods. Mod down the fort for us over there. Just Cause and Zulu in the house. And that's over on Twitter. Of course, we have our locals chat, which is chatting away over there. And we like to hang out a little after the show for an after party. Let's see what's going on over here. Dana says those were very polite sneezes. Well, thank you, Dana. I try to be a classy gentleman, even when sneezing. We've got Paul Minot, who says, #1 book on my top 10 list of books, of fake books for 2022. It's called Hello, My Friends. Daily affirmations for you, for your life, and for your future. Written by Robert Gouveia. Performed by Robert Gouveia. Hello, my friends. Welcome to my first Audible. It's great to be with you here today. Maybe we'll work on that. I don't know. Hello, my friends. Thank you, Paul. Oh, gosh. We'll see. We'll have to see what happens. Hilarious. All right. So that's the effect, says Paul. Rob's second career as a narrator? I don't know. We'll have to see. But we're going over there, my friends, for a beautiful after party. We had some great comments in here. Let's see. So 3 girlies is over there. All right. And so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going to wrap it up right there. Head on over to Locals for our beautiful after party. If you want to join us over there, of course, you know the place to be. It's over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have a ton of fun. And we do members only things. We did a member morning stream today. We'll do another morning stream probably tomorrow. I have a super busy day tomorrow, but we like to hang out over there. So come check us out. watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Also, thank you to our sponsors, of course, forpatriots.com. Head on over there. Get your survival food, get your survival gear, solar panels, water supply, everything is over there. Forpatriots.com. Promo code Robert. 10% off everything in the store. Of course, our law firm, the R&R Law Group, we're located here in Arizona. We help good people charged with crimes. People, snowbirds come from all over the country into Arizona. Cops are out wilding. Cops be out wilding out there on the New Year's holidays and the Christmas breaks, and we help people recover from those encounters. And so we help good people. 480-787-0394. Online at rrlawaz.com. But, and thank you to the mods who mod down the fort for us. Big shout outs to Play and Hooky, to Zulu in the chat. I saw Just Cause. Vienti Kiss is probably playing games tonight. Game night. K-Bean in the house. Shout out to our lovely, lovely Lean. Play and Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Gio, and Henry swing by on occasion. And we are grateful for the mods. The mods mod down the fort for us, and we're grateful for that. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Happy New Year, my friends. It's going to be a beautiful 2023. If you missed yesterday's video, it was a great walk and talk. Had a beautiful little treat there at the end, and I'm just sort of grateful to have been able to share that with you, to share this show with you, and to share a beautiful 2023 with you together. We will be back here tomorrow to do it all again, and I hope to see you here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Locals, I'll see you in 30 seconds. Everybody else, have a tremendous evening. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.